This is what's called a trim piece of rough. The rough that I had was close to a rectangular shape, but there was an end piece which could not become a part of the final emerald-shaped gemstone. So the option was to grind that excess rough with my lap as I cut the emerald-shaped aquamarine. But a second option was to use what's called a trim saw and cut off the excess rough. I used the second option because aquamarine is not inexpensive rough, and was rewarded with this nice extra piece of gemstone rough. For a new cutter, I would say you don't need a trim saw initially if you don't have one and you don't have the funds for one. But the sooner that you can afford some type of trim saw, I recommend you go ahead and get one, because this not only saves wear and tear on your laps, but it also sometimes rewards you with an extra piece of rough like I have here, basically a free piece of rough. This piece of rough, this trim piece, is kind of shaped like a triangle, so I will use a trillion design to cut it. My favorite trillion design was created by the late Jeff Graham and is called Signature Number 4. Jeff provided this design to all cutters to freely use. He released it to the public domain. In fact, he provided about 24 of his favorite designs to all cutters to freely use. Now, Jeff had made many other designs which are not available for free use by gem cutters without purchasing one of the many books that Jeff published his designs in. And I explain how you can find and download all of the free designs that Jeff released to the public domain in a video called Fastening a Madeira Citrine with a Trillion Design. So if you're interested in looking at all the free designs that Jeff gave to us, go there and it shows you how to get those designs and to download them. Finished preforming our aquamarine with the 360 topper, and what I want to show you is for a trillion design, there's a facet, center facet right here, and on the girdle will be a facet that aligns to that, and then two facets on both sides of that, one on each side for the next tier and one on each side of that for the next tier, and the same with the girdle. So I've marked with my Sharpie the facet that I'm talking about. This facet is going to match. There'll be a line right down the girdle that lines up with this facet. I haven't cut the other 4 facets, 2 tiers, 2 rows of facets on the preforming. And I just wanted to show you that a mistake that people often make, newer cutters, when they're doing a trillion, is they'll take this first cut, which all it's going to do is right there. That's all you're cutting to, okay? And they'll cut it all the way in to clean up and make your trillion design. They'll cut it in to there. You know, they'll cut this in. They'll just keep cutting it in to make a nice preform, and they'll lose a lot of rough because these next facets, when I do the girdle, there's going to be another one at a different angle going to here and here, and then another one. And I'll show you that. I'm going to use the 600 grit now and you cut the second and third row of girdle facets. So I'll show you that they will clean up a lot of this because they come in further and further. And you would have lost rough if you would have used the first cut to close up this gap and make it a nice trillion design. And I'll show you that. Okay, I've made the first facet cut on the second tier or row that's going to go along the girdle, and I marked with my Sharpie across the bottom because that helps me see where to stop. Right there, that goes all the way up and matches our first facet on the pavilion. So that's where I stop. So it's now set, and I'll do the other. There's another facet on each side. So each of the 3 sides gets 2 facets. That's 6 more. And then there's another row that'll cut at even more of an angle out here. So it's starting to cut in our opening here where this is not a nice triangle yet, trillion design. So Let me cut the rest of these facets and the next row, and then we'll take a look at it and see if we've closed up these points at each end of the trillion. I've cut the other 4 facets on each of the sides of the trillion, and each of the 2 on this side and 2 on that side are more and more of a steep angle, and they correspond with the facets coming down from the pavilion when we're done. They don't have to be exact right now. Again, we're just using the 600 diamond on a bat lap, so we're using 600 toppers diamonds, so it doesn't have to be perfect. We'll do the 1200 next, and then the 3000 bat lap, and then we'll most likely polish with the dark side and cerium oxide, and then it'll be perfectly aligned. But right now, close enough is just fine. But I did want to show you that those next 2 facets on each side, two tiers, closed up our end of our pavilion, made it the triangle. And same here. Here, almost, not quite, but we'll get it with the 1200 when we go over it next. So the point is, the first cut was only meant on your girdle to bring your girdle to match this first pavilion facet right here. And again, just don't make the mistake of thinking you have to cut that one all the way in to make these match. If you do, your stone is going to be like a lot smaller than it needs to be, because then when you're done with that first facet, you do 2 more rows that come in even further, and your stone's going to be much smaller than it needs to be. So I just wanted to show you that. I've started pre-polishing with the 3000 diamond grit on a bat lap. This is 1200 grit polish right here on these, and this is the 3000 grit polish. I'm sure many of you cutters are saying that you would, why bother? You could have gone straight to polish from the 1200. With barrel, I'm sure that I could have gone straight to polish, but by using the 3000 grit, it lets me get my facets move them exactly where I want them, and it gives a really good pre-polish. So one of the keys to having no problems with a polish is having a good pre-polish. So could have gone straight to polish now instead of pre-polishing, but we're taking it one step further just to make sure I move all the facets exactly where I want them and have a really good pre-polish, so when I go to the dark side lap with aluminum oxide, I won't have any problems. I finished polishing the pavilion of our Aquamarine. It's got a little bit of lint on it, and just whenever you're trying to clean your stone up for a photograph or something, you can always use just the canned air to get the lint off. So you can see the stone is all polished, and we'll transfer it and cut the crown. Finished polishing the upper half of our trillion Aquamarine, and just have to polish the table and we'll be done. So table is the next step. For our Aquamarine trillion, I finished polishing the stone. The table polished up very nicely with dark side lap with cerium oxide. For the table, I went straight to a 3000 grit diamond on a bat lap. There wasn't that much room that I needed. I didn't need to grind a whole lot of stone away, so the 3000 grits where I started, and from there I went straight to polish. Polished up beautifully with this dark side. Dark side lap seemed to be doing very well. So now we'll put it in, soak it in acetone and measure it, weigh it, and send it off to BOPIE. I cut this gemstone into the signature number 4 design by Jeff Graham and had no issues cutting or polishing this Aquamarine. I polished our Aquamarine using cerium oxide on my new dark side lap from Gearloose without any problems. In my opinion, a new gem cutter, after cutting several other stones, would have no problem cutting this design. I would not recommend this be the first design that a brand new gem cutter try to cut, but could easily be the third or fourth stone that the new gem cutter cuts. Happy faceting, everyone.